Hey, Oriana, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brittany. Thanks for having me.
So great to have you here. Where are you calling in from?
I am in Jersey City today.
What? Yeah, I didn't know that. I am from Sussex County, New Jersey.
Oh, wow. My husband wants to visit that neighborhood for potential houses down the line.
Okay, we should
I'll
talk
be
later.
calling you. Yeah.
You call me up because, it's really beautiful. Sussex County is like the reason they call it the Garden State. I mean, we got the highest mountains, Appalachia. I grew up on horse farms. Like people don't even know how country I actually am. But I was an hour from Manhattan, at the same time. So yes, well, definitely we could talk about that for sure. Well, let's get into a little bit more about your background. Our listeners love to learn about our guests. Where are they from? What did you study? Did you have a career before this? And how did you end up here?
Sure. Where am I from? We could talk hours, but long story short, I was born in Venezuela. I grew up in Saudi Arabia. And so my parents worked
Oil
there.
and gas.
Yeah, no, yeah, my dad was in construction. My mom's a plastic surgeon.
Okay.
And yeah, just I grew up there most of my life, and then I went to boarding school in Europe, and then I moved to the US for college, and I went to Boston University, and I studied economics. And I thought I was, well, before that, I was pre-med, and I thought I was going to be a doctor, and my mom is a doctor. And where I grew up, your career path was very sort of your traditional lines. You're a doctor, you're an architect, you're a lawyer, you're an engineer. And
Take your pick,
sales,
honey. Take your
yeah,
pick.
exactly. Take your pick. You're a woman, so not engineer, so I'll go for the other one. And then it's like, okay, entrepreneurship or sales or marketing or just didn't exist. And then I came to the US, and I have always loved the sciences. I was good at it. And it was just like, okay, because you like sciences, you're going to be a doctor. But I realized that there was so much more to a career in the sciences than just being a doctor. And I really liked economics, and I really liked connecting with people and talking to people. But this idea of a job in sales where I grew up was like kind of looked down on a little bit. And I didn't really grow up thinking that that's what I would want to do.
Mhm.
And then I did my first internship, my first like real like internship outside of just being like a college math grader, or like a company internship,
Yeah.
at a women's health company. So I started women's health like my senior years of college, and I kind of fell into women's health coincidentally and never left. And I've been here for over 10 years now. Yep. And I just got an internship, which turned into a full-time job. And I was in their international sales department, and I was working on expanding the use of it was a women's health test in maternal fetal medicine, and expanding the use of it in South America and in the Middle East, because I spoke those languages, and like try to, open the access of testing in other third world countries. And I just, from there, I ended up having a career in women's health, in the life sciences. That company ended up getting acquired by a German company. I moved to Germany and worked with them on expanding cervical cancer screening in Africa, spent some time in East Africa on setting up some of the first mobile clinics to get access to testing for women. And then from there, I did another startup in women's health back in Boston around preterm labor and like how are ways to assess the risk of preterm labor. And then we sold that company in 2018, and now I'm back trying to do it again in ovarian cancer.
Oh my God. All right. I have so many questions, and we haven't even gotten to like your current company. Before I start digging into all these questions, the current company, AOA, you're the co-founder now. It's not like somebody else, it's their company and you're joining it. This one you're leading, correct?
Yeah. Started it from day one.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, we're going to put a pin in AOA for a second, because I didn't realize the extent of your background is so incredible. Could you speak on, briefly or as much as you want about like women's health in South America, in Africa, in the Middle East? Like, what am I as a, North Carolina based podcast host missing about femtech from, these other continents? What should we know about it?
If we think that the US is behind on investing in women's health, then as compared to some of these other areas of the world, we're light years ahead. Like I spent so much time in all countries of South America, Africa, and the Middle East, showing up to doctors' offices as an early sales rep, and then later as part of like negotiations with NGOs for widespread screening of, we need to get women access to testing. We need to get women access to testing. And I got answers from, you can't talk about that. That's taboo. Or we can't talk about screening for HPV because that implies a sexually transmitted disease and promiscuity. And that's not okay. And like that disease didn't even exist here because there's no promiscuity in these countries.
Oh my gosh.
And so forget access to funding, forget having the tools. You're working with just a society that is not even open to the concept of giving access to this testing. And when I was working in Kenya and we were setting up cervical cancer screening, and I worked for a company that had a product that was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that was a remote system to screen for HPV that worked on a van. Like this product was working and ready to go. And we just had to get access, like, and I say just, okay, we had to work with government bodies to get acceptance to be able to set up mobile clinics on vans and do this. And it was so much pushback because why would we do this? Why do we need to set this up? Eventually I went around it through actually lobbying with the first ladies of a lot of these African countries. They were led by this incredible woman who put together this band of first ladies of Africa to really focus on topics that affected women, women's maternal health, women's screening, just different areas for women's health. And it was only because of lobbying with them and their support that I was able to do like a little bit of work in some of the most remote parts of Kenya to get them access to testing. But it's like, they're even further behind than I consider us over here behind.
Yeah. Oriana, you are such a boss babe. Like, oh my God, you worked with all the first ladies of Africa. Like, this is amazing. And also like, you know, women, that's what we do, right? We get together and we say enough is enough. We put our foot down and we try to make change. So that's incredible. Was there like, you know, you're talking about like, there's this real resistance to even talking about it. Did you find that there was sometimes a lack of words? Like they literally didn't have a word for some of these things that had to do with women's health?
Yes, absolutely. Like there wasn't even a noun for certain things, or they would use the English version of that, you know, because it didn't exist in a local language.
Yep. And was there like preconceived notions of this like hymen, right, that getting popped or anything? I'm curious about like some of the resistance to testing. I wonder if, you know, even in America, the United States, we have this preconceived notion that a woman has a cherry that needs popping, and we have debunked that. If you are listening and you're like, wait, what? Go check out Vaginas 101. We have a whole episode on it. There is no hymen that needs popping. So no. But I wonder, I mean, here in the United States, we still have that preconceived notion. Is that the same in those other countries?
Absolutely. And you have, you know, in the United States, after you get to a certain age, or once you've started to have sexual activity, then you go through you're recommended to go to an annual OBGYN appointment. And even if you're not sexually active, after a certain age, you're recommended to go to an annual OBGYN, you know, appointment. In other parts of the world, that's just not the case at all. There's like no need to go to an OBGYN unless you're pregnant. And I would say, or there's something wrong. But then again, if there's something wrong, you don't even want to go because you don't want to be diagnosed with something being wrong, like in a sexually transmitted manner or in a female health manner. Or when I was first starting, and I remember that we were quite a few women working at the company as salespeople because men just don't want to say vagina on the phone. Like I had to explain, you need to use a vaginal swab and collect the sample. And no, and that was in the US.
Wow. Yeah. Crazy. Well, thank you for all that you've done. And please let Femtech Focus know how we can, you know, continue to support all the vulvas all over the place, because that's what we want to do. We want to not just help affluent white vulvas. We want to help all the vulvas, all of them. That is an incredible story. What a background. Tell us about AOA.
So after the sale of the last startup that I was a part of, that acquisition happened in 2018, two individuals that I've been working with, who are today my co-founders, I've been working with them for the last 9 years, Anna and Alex, and hint, that's where AOA, the name, came from.
Oh,
So yep, the three of us have just been working together for 9 years, and we've been part of some incredible women's health companies, and we're so passionate about it that we said, okay, well, what's next? What's another area in women's health that needs innovation? Where is there a problem that we need to help find a solution for? And we went on the hunt. None of us are scientists. The three of us have been in the women's health in the diagnostics field specifically, but none of us have ever developed a product. So we first started to look at, published patents, tech transfer offices, universities that were doing really great research. And we looked at things like endometriosis, preeclampsia, ovarian cancer was one of the areas that we were looking into. And in 2019, somebody that we had been working with introduced us to Professor Zoghbi, who's the inventor of this technology and today our chief scientific officer as well. And he found a very unique way to be able to diagnose ovarian cancer early. And after review of really his technology and what the need was in ovarian cancer, we stopped work on everything else and just dove right in. We got rights to the license agreement with him. We filed for new IP. We did our first proof of concept study. And now we're at the stage where we're raising our first round to really invest and develop this early invention into what will become a blood test to be able to diagnose ovarian cancer early.
Wow. Very interested in learning about the science behind it. And also, listeners, if you are not a scientist, but you're like, I want to start a business, this is one of the ways you can go about that, is look at what research is being done, what IP is being filed, tech transfer offices at universities, because a lot of scientists, they can research and create, but they're not business people. When I first became an entrepreneur, I was like, who's Mr. EBITDA? Like, who is that? Why is he always involved? I had like no idea.
90% of medical innovation stays in academia.
Yeah.
It's like there is such a need. This is my future business idea and anybody come to me for this in the future, but it's like we need to find a way to connect entrepreneurs and business people to these scientists so that this flow from academia to the actual marketplace, to the woman that need it, to whoever needs it, is so much smoother, because 90% of medical innovation stays in research.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do want to give a shout out. So I did my PhD at Baylor College of Medicine in the Texas Medical Center in Houston. And it's actually the biggest medical center in the world. Many people do not know that. And we have amazing universities like BCM, but we also have Rice. And Rice University has a very good MBA program. And we're right across the street from each other. And there's this organization called Venture, and they host like entrepreneurship, like webinars and seminars and meetups and whatever. So you get all these MBAs mixing in with all of these like PhDs, and like magic happens.
That's how exactly
happens. And like, that was when I was in my PhD program, I was getting real worried about what career I was going to choose. Cause I was like, I got way too much personality to be in a lab my whole life. Podcaster was not on the list of potential careers. That's where I finally found myself. But when I went to those meetups where I saw the business people and the scientists, and I was like, this is my tribe. Like, these are my folks, right? Yep. So we need more of that. We need more.
Yep, absolutely.
How prevalent is ovarian cancer?
So here's the thing with ovarian cancer. A woman's risk of getting ovarian cancer in her lifetime is 1 in 78.
Okay.
It's not as high as some of your other diseases. The biggest challenge with ovarian cancer are twofold. The symptoms are not specific, and there's no diagnostic test. So what I'm going to break down, and I don't mean this is a way to scare anybody, but honestly, to be attuned to your body. The symptoms of ovarian cancer are excessive bloating, changes in bowel movements, bleeding, abdominal pain. Honestly, women go through that once a month at least.
Yeah.
But it'll be, and again, a woman typically knows her body really well. It'll be more than your average bloating after pizza. It'll be not bleeding like when you're on your period. It'll be like not the kind of infrequent urination when you have a UTI. Like 90% of women that have had ovarian cancer knew that the symptoms were different. Like they knew that something was going on. But all I can say is if you feel those things, go to your doctor right away.
because those are the same symptoms as menstruation, are women often not believed?
Exactly. And there's no test for it. But that's exactly it. They're not believed. And so many cases, they're like, oh, you're young. The chance that you'll have ovarian cancer is so low, like not a big deal. But also the doctors don't have anything to test them with. So it's like, even if they did believe them, there is no diagnostic test today for it.
Wow. There's no like mammogram for your ovaries.
Nope. There's no mammogram. You can't detect it on PET scan. If a mass is less than 1.5 centimeters, you won't see it on an ultrasound. The only thing that they try to use today is called a CA-125 test. That's approved in the US and in most countries for monitoring of ovarian cancer. It's not approved for diagnosing, but they don't have anything else, so they do use it. And so what they're trying to see is they'll test your CA-125 over time and say, okay, it looks like your CA-125 levels are continuously rising over about a 3 to 6 month period. That's suspicious. So we have to refer you to an oncologist. And the only way that we can diagnose you is by doing an exploratory biopsy surgery.
Where they cut open your abdomen, go in.
Into your ovaries, into your fallopian tube, where the rates of loss of ovaries are high from just the exploratory process. Like, you don't even have ovarian cancer and you already have to go through a surgery that risks your ovaries.
My God.
There's no test. There's just no test for it today.
And why not? Why is there no test? Could you riddle me that?
So why is there no test is a great question. A few reasons. It's been very hard to identify what biomarkers. Biomarkers are like specific targets in your body that identify for ovarian cancer. Only 7% of all non-dilutive and funding actually goes into women's health. So you have this issue of, it's a women's health issue, so probably not high priority, but also it's really hard. It's been really hard to find a target that's specific to ovarian cancer until we came along.
So what is the survival rate before we get into your tech? Because I really want to do that.
Yeah.
But I just had no idea about this ovarian cancer stuff, which is like, I've done over 100 interviews, right? And at this point, I'm still learning. I'm like, wait, what? So here we are. There's no diagnostic test. So like, what is the typical outcome for women? Like, is ovarian cancer one of those things that women die from all the time? Like, not, but if they get it, like, does it look like that's usually the end result? Like, what is the look like?
80% of women today are diagnosed already stage 3 and stage 4. And the survival rate of disease is 28%.
Wow.
So most women that are being diagnosed of ovarian cancer are unfortunately passing away.
Yeah.
And a huge cause of that is it takes so long to actually get a diagnosis, and ovarian cancer develops and spreads quickly.
Wow.
So these women are coming in. Even if they are believed, they have to have serial monitor testing over time to see if those levels are going up. If they are going up, they have to go to a surgery. Then they have to get that scheduled surgery. There are only 750 gynecology oncologists in the United States that perform that surgery. And that's in the US, Brittany. Your average woman travels 200 miles to receive ovarian cancer care.
Wow.
And so then they finally get a diagnosis. And for most of them, it's too late.
Yeah. Holy crap. Are there certain ethnicities of women that get ovarian cancer more?
We have seen that the African American population in the United States have the higher incidence rates of ovarian cancer. Yeah, I would say that's probably the most prevalent one right now.
And is there like, when I think of breast cancer, I know a lot of people think of like the BRCA1 mutation. Is there some kind of genetic trait with ovarian cancer, or is it mostly like environmental toxins that might lead to it?
A little bit of both. So you do have BRCA1 and BRCA2 positive women are at high risk for ovarian cancer. That encompasses about 10% of all the cases. The rest are, it could be environmental, your endocrine disruptors, but it could also be any other way that cancer forms, right? Yeah. Which we're still figuring all that out today.
Yeah. And, listeners, cancer, we call it cancer, but every type of cancer is a whole different disease. Skin cancer versus breast cancer versus bone and brain and ovarian, like they are all so freaking different. So when we say cure for cancer, it's like, that's just actually just totally not even plausible. As somebody who studied in genetic stability and mutation, like that's just, cancer is very complicated. And the fact that we don't know a lot about ovarian is like really, really upsetting, because we can't just take all of our knowledge from, pancreatic cancer and apply it to ovarian, right? It's all different. So let's get into AOA. So you're creating like a diagnostics test?
Yep. We're creating a blood-based diagnostic test.
Okay.
And so for all these women that are coming in, and I think one thing to distinguish is the symptomatic population and the screening. So you have a lot of companies out there that are screening. So after you get to a certain age, then you get screened for prostate cancer, or you get your annual mammogram, but you don't have any symptoms of the disease. We're not quite there yet with our test or with anything in ovarian cancer. We're starting off first with all those women that are coming to their doctor complaining of those symptoms. So they know that something is wrong. They're going and they're showing up at their doctor, and the doctor has nothing to test them with today.
Yeah.
We are developing a blood test to draw their blood in the standard way and to identify specific markers that we have found in ovarian cancer, and be able to tell the doctor accurately with high sensitivity and specificity that yes, this woman does have ovarian cancer, or no, this woman does not have ovarian cancer, without the wait and see approach, without the exploratory surgery.
Wow. Would you be able to tell if it's like early stage versus late stage?
Not in the test that we are designing right now. So it is allowing us to diagnose ovarian cancer, not to stage it quite yet.
Got it. Yeah. Believe me, your test is likely freaking amazing. Do not take my question as like, oh, it doesn't do that. Like, no.
No, that's fine.
For making this test. So like, what is the like, timeline for this being out in the market? People can actually use it.
So we're looking at, don't hold me to this because things change all the time. We are still, we're still in development of the product. Then we have to do our FDA clinical trial, and then we have to get through our FDA approval process. But we're looking at a commercial launch in about 4 to 5 years from now. So like around 2025.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
And so you're going down the FDA route rather than like the licensed test diagnostic one. I think that's the other route too.
Yeah, the LDT route. Yeah.
Why is there a difference? Only because we do have some founders that are, early stage in these kind of areas. So what's the difference between going FDA versus the licensed test diagnostic?
Yep. So your LDT route allows you to develop a centralized lab process. And that centralized lab process means all your samples have to go to your lab, and you have a process, and you have done your own study that vets that this technology works. FDA does not allow that to happen in any and all diseases. It can be done in certain areas in certain disease types. Okay. Ovarian cancer is not one of them. And it's usually cancers are not one of them because the risk of doing your own study that isn't audited by the FDA could have very lifelong ramifications on an individual's life. And so there are certain areas where it's like the risk profile is low if you had, a false diagnosis or what may be, and it's okay to send all your samples to one place. And so then you'll develop an LDT. Some people start the LDT approach with the goal to turn into FDA down the line, just so that they can start to get revenue and launch their product and get some market awareness. Unfortunately, ovarian cancer, or fortunately, from doesn't fall into that category because the risk of a diagnostic test is quite high. If you misdiagnose a woman, that has lifelong ramifications.
Absolutely. I always like to describe to people, like, they're like, wait, what do you mean? Like, there's certain tests that don't need FDA. And I'm like, I always tell them about Everlywell, right? Yeah. Like, you can get your food sensitivity test at home. And based off of what you said, it's like, hey, listen, if the test somehow had a fluke in it and it said you're allergic to onions, whatever, like maybe your life may not dramatically change. You may miss out on onion-based pierogies or something. I don't know. But
exactly.
Otherwise, you'll be fine.
Has told you didn't have ovarian cancer, but you did.
That's called the lawsuit and consequences. Being a pioneer in this, are you worried about, or has it already happened that there's like other barriers to getting to market because you're the first? So for example, like, is there a billing code for this? Like, has there ever been a study to even like standardize your test with? Like, what are some of there's so many things in femtech. It blows my mind that it's like, well, no one's actually ever done this. So like, there's no billing code or whatever. And so tell me about that, your experience.
100%. I mean, you have written ACOG, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, has written guidelines for how to diagnose ovarian cancer, and they're based on what's available today. So we have to go up and convince them through literature that our test needs to be included in those guidelines, because now there's something for ovarian cancer. We need to do a bunch of clinical studies all across the world with populations that are diverse and have different access to care to show, again, that this test will actually work. We may have the opportunity to leverage on an existing billing code, but that's rare. The last two companies that I worked on, we had to develop the billing code. You're absolutely right. But like even utilizing an existing billing code, we have to figure out how we're going to fit into that and how we're going to make that work for us. And so it's the FDA is one of the barriers to entry. Introducing a novel technology in femtech is like you're climbing a very steep mountain most of the time.
Yep. No, absolutely. I mean, just the other day, I was interviewing a woman. She's a cardiologist, and she was talking about how, I'm just finished my cardiology training. Turns out there's one line in the whole book that said, if a woman is pregnant, she should exercise by increasing her heart rate. But like, there's never been a study on like how pregnant women should exercise for their heart health without hurting the baby. Like there's literally nobody's ever studied, like, should women even be running when they're pregnant? Like, should they do yoga? Should they not do yoga? Like, no one, it just says like increase their heart rate. And it's like, okay, that's not science. That's not like a full recommendation.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, if anything, the clinical trials that we saw on the COVID vaccine, right? Like, let's not even include pregnant women for now. Let's just like see at a later stage what that could look like.
Yeah. Ask your physician if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. I did an Insta story. I said, doctors, do you know something we don't? And like all the doctors were like, nope, we don't. Like, it's just going to be like based on our opinion, like CDC didn't give us facts as anything special. Like it's based on how I feel that day, what I'm going to tell my pregnant patients to do, this is crazy. It's so crazy. So, what are, as you're approaching gynecologists and oncologists, like, are they super excited for this?
For the most part, yes. Yeah. We have interviewed a lot of obstetricians, gynecologists, oncologists across the board. And you have some that are like, I'm skeptical. Nobody has ever been able to do this before. It makes you think that you can. And then you have others that are like, and this is the majority, there is such a desperate need for something. As long as it's even just a little bit better, let us know, because we'd be interested in working with you. And the vast majority are like what you have, and we've showed them data, and we're putting together a clinical advisory board, are like, wow, this is really, really interesting, and like the data is looking really strong. How can we work with you? How can we find ways to really like make this access to testing better?
Yeah, totally. Wow. Well, this has been incredible. I am really excited for your past, present, and future in women's health. You've already done a lot. I'm, however Femtech Focus can support you and AOA, like that is just, this sounds really important, obviously.
Thanks so much, Brittany.
Yeah. We have two questions that our listeners love. The first one is, we have a lot of aspiring femtech founders. So what's an area in women's health and wellness that still needs innovating?
I can think of two. One area that we were looking into that we were challenged with finding something was endometriosis. Being able to diagnose endometriosis and then to effectively manage a woman's life that does have endometriosis, whether that be through fertility or just the physical pain of endometriosis. Mm-hmm. There are such poor solutions available today. So tackling that problem is one. And then, as someone that went through IVF, I think the entire fertility journey for women needs profound innovation. Some of it is so archaic, and some of it, I've heard of a few companies trying to disrupt it as well. But I've heard of a lot of companies that are putting the focus on women, which is really great, and just like driving you to do preconception or driving you to do all these things. But I think a lot of it also has to translate into practice, because I'm somebody that just does a lot of research, and I've been in women's health and I'm well informed. When I show up to my doctor's office and I'm like, I've done this, this, and this, they're like, yeah, but we don't do that here. And so it's like translating and really working alongside women and the doctors to put everybody on the same page.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think that it comes up a lot, and I do see some companies trying to like do that. For me as an investor and like an expert in this industry, I always wonder, how does like supporting a woman turn into a business model?
Yeah.
Uh, that sucks, right? Like we should be able to
Yeah.
make money and educate, and community should be the thing that we all pay for, has value. But that is one thing that I always think about. How is, having a chat bot that supports you or gives you blogs that are correct for what you're going through, how does that translate into a revenue model?
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are the challenges we get in an emerging industry. How do we make money from this? No one's done it.
10 years ago, Femtech was not a word.
Yeah.
Like if we were lucky, people talked about women's health.
Yeah.
But like that was the extent of it.
Yeah. Well, since you're an OG, original gangster in women's health, real quick, what do you think about the word femtech? I'm every which direction. I'm on Clubhouse, I'm on like Facebook, whatever. People are like, I don't like the word femtech. It's too limiting. It's too this, it's too that. And I'm like, yeah, but we're all here because the title of this group's called Femtech. We found each other. We're here. I don't think we should like throw the baby out with bathwater about the word femtech. So what do you think about the word femtech?
I don't have a qualm with the word femtech. Here's where, and this is my personal experience with it, where sometimes I am puzzled, is when I'm approaching investors that invest in femtech, there's quite a few that don't invest in regulated femtech, which is like FDA diagnostics approaches. And for a lot of people, femtech means apps, wellness, et cetera, et cetera. And so sometimes I'm challenged is, how do I know who is who? Because I also don't want to waste somebody's time if they only invest in apps and I am a diagnostic based product. But I definitely think it's been helpful to just, as a community, bring people together, because I am likewise interested in people that are doing apps and wellness and connecting with those founders and, sometimes speaking with those investors. So I think it sounds better than women's health.
Yeah. Yeah, because I would say, well, if you Googled women's health, you might come up with Jenny Craig down the street. If you Google femtech, you're talking about the innovation with accelerators and fun. So it kind of gets you better to like where you're supposed to, the neighborhood you're actually looking in.
Absolutely. So I think it gets you in the right neighborhood, 100%.
So we'll see. We trademarked Femtech Focus. I hope it sticks around for a little while longer. Going to have a brand about it.
Absolutely.
What do you think the femtech industry as a whole needs the most right now in order to be successful?
Investment, 100% investment. I think there are passionate people. I think there are problems to solve. I think there's clearly innovation, some of times waiting to be, invested in or found. And I think people are excited and willing for it. I think the biggest hurdle that we face is twofold: investing in femtech and then investing in the founders, because typically those founders are women because they understand the problem, and women get 2% of all funding, and femtech gets, or women's health and femtech gets 7% of all funding. So compounded, you're just at such a disadvantage across anything that's either, that affects both men and women, or that's just even only men. So I think the biggest thing that this industry needs is allied investors.
100%. Let me ask you this. So there are a lot of female founder funds, established and upcoming. What I find, correct me if you find different, but what I find is that a lot of these female founder funds do not do med device, therapeutics. They are doing like leisure, travel, CPG, which is fantastic. And like, that's awesome. But I had a few months ago someone say, hey, well, like, is there a female founder fund that funds med devices? And I was like, damn, you know what? And I
was the one that asked that question at Clubhouse. That was me. A few months ago, that was me.
Full circle here. So you have been in my mind, because for months now I've been like, damn, it's so true though. They don't really fund.
They don't.
No.
Because I will say something, and this is going to sound probably a little controversial, but I think we're in a safe space amongst.
Yeah, we're safe space.
People want to invest in femtech for, I think, two broad reasons. Number one, they're passionate about it. Number two, it's a buzz. it's a buzzword, right? Investing in women and investing in female founders is like, I get to cross, and I've had an investor say this to me word for word. You check off the diversity checklist for us. So you know what? If that got me into the meeting, okay, I hope you continue to invest for other reasons. But to go to your point, I think for some funds, and I'm not categorizing them all in this way, it's cool to invest in female founders, and it's cool to invest in femtech, but it's really hard to invest in diagnostics, and it's really hard to invest in therapeutics, and it is risky. But that's what we need. If we're going to solve problems like endometriosis and ovarian cancer and infertility, your apps are going to help, but they're not going to solve the medical problems.
Yeah. I mean, if we're putting billions into Bitcoin and blockchain and rockets that can land on ships, we need a goddamn ovarian test.
You need humans. You need humans that come from those ovaries, okay, to pilot those rockets and spend that Bitcoin money and do things with them, you know, like it's these ovaries that are responsible for future generations to come.
Yes. I feel like we should have like evangelical tax or something. If they believe in ovaries that much, like they should fund this. Let's talk about controversy. I'll put a pin in that. But no, but so we're actually really excited. I'm partnering up with my business partner, Jess Carr, and we're starting Coyote Ventures. And, you know, she's background's a scientist, I'm a scientist, and we were debating on our investment thesis. Do we want to include med device and therapeutics? And I said, we have to do med device and diagnostics, you know, med device and diagnostic. Therapeutics, drugs are like, I mean, that's like billions, you know, our little seed fund, you know, whatever.
But
that's
even
investment
med device and diagnostics is going to be, it's going to be huge. It's it's so desperately needed. And we can have another conversation offline about how you should invest in AOA. But
you check all of our boxes. I'm just kidding, obviously. The boxes you check is that you're really fun to talk to. That's like my requirement. I'm like, do I enjoy interviewing you? Yes, you're up for investment. Well, this has been so much fun. You're amazing. Really, really cool moment there we had, bringing it all back. You're the person who asked me that question. I haven't stopped thinking about it. So yeah, thank you so much. And you know, keep it up. AOA, man. Nice work.
Thanks so much, Brittany. Thanks so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure talking to you today.